Hello, I'm Eric Snodgrass, and thank you for watching today's midday weather outlook for the southern region brought to you by Nutrien Ag Solutions. We start first with a satellite animation, and we can see a pretty broad sector here of both North America and out into the Atlantic, and we're watching a couple of things very carefully. First of all, we had the development of Tropical Storm Josephine, which you can see right over in this area. We're talking about where Josephine will be going, but notice how widespread the daily convective activity has been across parts of the southeast, getting over to parts of the delta, and then also coming out here. There's been some extremely heavy rainfall into this part of Oklahoma, getting into Arkansas and this section of Texas. You can see another round of storms there. You see what's waiting in the wings, deep lows that are moving through parts of Canada, and those fronts will be pushing into parts of the southeast soon. But before we get into a discussion about that, I would like to give you at least the latest on what we have in terms of tropical activity. So Josephine's going to have a difficult time because over the next 4 to 5 days, we're going to see the firm establishment of a large ridge in this area. And what that's going to do is send the jet stream around it like this, and it's going to dive into a broader trough here over the eastern part of the United States. And what that's going to do is it's going to take anything that's left over from Josephine and just pull it out to open ocean, which overall is very good. But one thing to notice about this is this particular pattern is going to set up quite a bit of heat to the west, and meanwhile over parts of the eastern United States, still some stagnant upper level flow, but much cooler temperatures are going to be coming in. We're going to take a close look at those in a few moments. So Josephine making that hard turn to the north and then back out to open ocean, and struggling with some drier air and higher wind shear, which is why right now there's not much anticipation of this system strengthening beyond a tropical storm. It's actually just barely a tropical storm as of the 5 a.m. update here, with max sustained winds here at 40 miles an hour. You got to get above 39 to be considered a tropical storm. So this one is relatively weak and is going to stay that way. But in addition to watching that, just to keep kind of on a thread we talked about this week, we are anticipating a lot of convection coming off of Africa. So still the upper levels of the atmosphere conducive to that. Here are the cyclone tracks for Josephine. And we're going to be watching this pretty powerful coastal low develop here and run out into the open ocean here, producing some strong straight line winds and joining up with a deep trough that's going to be here in the North Atlantic. It's an interesting setup moving forward. But just want to point out here, not seeing much coming out of the Gulf of Mexico, and certainly not this time of year coming out of the Caribbean. So this is just kind of our next 10 days here, looking at where we're expecting cyclones to form. So let's bring it back now. Just take a closer look here over the last 7 days at accumulated precipitation. So some of those storms that have been riding along that stationary boundary in the southeastern United States have been capable of producing some very, very heavy rainfall. There have been spots that have been missed in the delta, and of course you can see the large area in central Texas where we've endured some very high heat and also incredibly dry conditions. The southwestern monsoon has been quite weak, although we did get some bigger storms that moved in over this last week into sections of Arizona that have been very dry. And some of those storms have curled around here through the panhandles. But notice how heavy the rainfall is riding through this corridor here into parts of Kansas, getting into eastern Oklahoma and that part of Arkansas there that saw some extremely heavy rainfall. Over the next week, this is what we got from the European model, and I'm just going to quickly flash over to the GFS just to show you that both models are continuing on this stormy pattern for the southeast here, with things being drier as you go back over towards Texas. And I think overall both models have a pretty good idea on what that flow pattern is going to look like. So pretty decent model agreement here. So if I just play out for you the next 60 hours, you're going to once again see storms popping there over the southeast, and once again moving up through the mid-Atlantic, some very heavy rainfall. Watch this again, working through the day today into tonight, and then tomorrow midday, and then tomorrow evening. So that's where we're expecting the heaviest rainfall over the next 60 hours or so here from the high resolution NAM. But turn your attention to the north central United States, and what do you see? You certainly see a pretty large front that's sneaking through right here, and it's going to bring in some much needed relief to the heat that has been in parts of Texas, and also as it comes through, possibly kicking off the potential for some stronger storms. It's going to just initiate the boundary on which some of those storms can form. And no, we're not going to be able to pinpoint down exactly where they're going to be at this point, but the chances for scattered storms there do exist as you get into the panhandles of Oklahoma and Texas. So let's take a look at this now from the operational European model. Just kind of play this one forward. You're going to watch, first of all, our coastal low take on off to the north and east. You'll see the frontal boundary coming through the north central plains, where we're going to have more severe weather here today. And then it's going to clear things out and give us a bit of a drier start to early next week, but the storms are going to keep popping after that. Watch it all happen here with me. Ready? Take a step back here. This is getting into Friday afternoon and evening, so you already saw this, why these scattered storms in this area. You can see the severe threat that's in the northern plains, and that's going to be our front that sweeps through here early next week. See it? So this is now Saturday morning. Saturday afternoon and evening. So another day of scattered storms here getting on Saturday evening. As we work our way then into Sunday morning, afternoon, and evening, this is where the front trails through, and you can now see the better chances for storms here in the European model. But notice as we get that front through, this is now Monday morning, Monday afternoon, and evening. We get a much better reduction overall in the chance of storms here across parts of the southeast. But Florida, getting back into central Texas, better chances of some pop-up storms in the heat of the day on Monday. But that heat isn't going to last too long, because as I get into Tuesday and Wednesday, look at this. We got better chances of seeing drier conditions as the much broader trough sweeps in and really dries things out, which overall is pretty good. And while the East Pacific tends to keep generating tropical systems, we do not see that happening here, at least through the next week or so, anywhere close to the southeastern part of the United States or the Gulf Coast. So this is now a week from today. A week from yesterday, next Thursday afternoon and evening, and then you can see that by the time we get there, the models want to go back over to that pattern where we just pop storms here on the afternoon heat. Okay, so from there, I want to just stretch you out and show you the operational European model, which has been doing very well in its pattern, and the GFS ensemble, which overall mimics this pretty well. We see pretty firm model confirmation on that broader ridge over the southwestern United States, and so we get some troughing on either side of that, as you can see here in both models. And what that does is that really tends to impact not only our precipitation patterns for week 2, which is what we're going to see here, but also temperatures as well. Now, both models, as we look out at their ensembles, have a little bit different flavor for what the southeast is going to see. And I'm tending to go more with the European here because that's been kind of the flavor we've had for the last couple of weeks, which is a bit wetter in places due to a lot more thunderstorm activity. But you can see that as you get back over to the central and southern plains, it does pick up on a slight dry bias in both models. But I'll just want to put in a word of caution here. This particular pattern is really going to be hottest and driest over the southwest, not necessarily getting into parts of Texas to the delta. I still think we're going to see some daily convective activity. In other words, your normal thunderstorms that we get during the summer. It's not the type of pattern that shuts that down. I'll explain that in just a few moments here. As we begin our discussion on temperatures, this is how the beginning of August is shaped up. So you can see that many places in the southwest here right now having their hottest start to August on record, whereas you get over into parts of eastern Texas, Oklahoma, Arkansas, Louisiana, so into the delta, we've got some pretty cool weather that has been around in places there. So this has been a chilly start in that section of the Mid-South getting down into the delta. But certainly today, the heat is going to be on in Texas. We have excessive heat watches and heat advisories out for a big section here of Texas getting into Oklahoma. And as we take a look at what those temperatures are going to do, this is the highs we're expecting today. Dallas to Amarillo, 103 to 106 degrees, getting down towards San Antonio, 106 degrees. It's going to be very hot in Texas. And Phoenix, you're just adding more of these days over 110 degrees Fahrenheit. Get back toward the delta and get east of there, and temperatures are much closer to our climatological normals. Playing this forward, well, you're going to see that front come through here Sunday. So we went right through Saturday into Sunday. By the time Monday gets here, that's when the cool down begins. You know, a cool down to the low 90s is going to feel fantastic for many of us here. As we work into next week, that's the pattern that sticks around. Look at that heat west while the broader trough comes in Tuesday into Wednesday and Thursday of next week. And because of that, this is going to be much, much more comfortable than what we saw at the end of this week over parts of Texas. Beyond that, the models are really persistent with that pattern. I mean, this is the 6 to 10 day forecast, and you can see that they're wanting to keep that ridge west for quite some time. So this pattern does appear to stagnate for about 10 days, which technically we could start to call this a block, but I don't see that really setting up in the North Pacific. 11 to 15 day, once again, the GFS coming in cooler than the European, as we can see here in the eastern half of North America. So we'll watch that trend carefully over the weekend and see how it continues to evolve. From there, though, remember this week we talked a lot about how the MJ was going back over into phase 8.1 and 2. And that's why the latest longer range outlooks from the European tend to take us back over to what we saw throughout much of July. So we noticed that when it comes to precipitation, nothing here screaming drought development as we get into the month of September. And I think the bias in through here is going to be cooler as we go forward. So that extends from our southern plains down to the delta, back all the way up into parts of the north central plains and the Canadian prairies. We're going to be warmer in the southwest. We're going to be warmer possibly in the southeast toward the northwest, much more closer to average along the Gulf Coast, I think, as we look out at these longer range temperatures. What I'd like to finish with is looking at some longer term issues with precipitation in the southeast specifically here for the month of September. So I just made a time series going back over the last 70 years of what those precipitation values have looked like for the month of September in the southeast. And I wanted to pull off here some of these drier years and make a composite map out of them. You see, during those drier years, we tend to favor deeper troughs in the Pacific Northwest with large blocking ridges that kind of set up somewhere between Nashville and Little Rock. And so what that ends up doing is that produces a big dome of heat here, and we block off Gulf of Mexico moisture transport. Now, we worry about this because going super hot and dry at the end of the growing season can be very problematic. Right now, the models just aren't seeing that happen. If you just kind of look at the flow here, this is from the European ensemble all the way up to mid-September. Do you almost notice that it's favoring more ridging in this area and a broader trough over there? That is not the kind of pattern that tends to produce a big area of high pressure sitting here, and as a consequence, we don't see the longer range models going over towards super hot and dry. Here's the other piece of this I want you to notice. The models have been very clear that they're wanting to park that big area of higher atmospheric pressure somewhere in this part of the North Atlantic. And as we see us moving toward the peak in hurricane season, if it stays there, that could help curl more of these systems out into the open ocean. That's just one factor here. But again, as we work our way into September, that's when we start to watch the Gulf very carefully as well. So just wanted to keep you aware of all the things I'm watching moving forward here. But with that, I'm going to wrap up this week of forecasting. Have a great weekend. We'll talk to you again next Monday, all right? Thank you.